No worries. We're going to get started in about another 2 minutes. We just like to let people have a couple minutes to get on. This is our monthly Future Conversations where we kind of just open it up during our lunch hour. Everyone is welcome. Oh, wow. Welcome, Lanisha. Are you back in LA yet, or are you still here? She was at our rally on Monday. Yes, Jay in the house. Thanks for coming.
Good afternoon, everyone. No, I'm back in LA.
I'm back in LA. Glad you made it safely.
Thank you.
Everyone can put their names and what your org is in the chat box. I think we're going to get started in just a moment. Oh, okay. I went to enter and everybody's coming in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to get started in just a moment. I have a couple of people asking for the login, so give me just a moment. All right. Happy Domestic Violence Awareness Month. All right, we are going to go on and get started. I know we still have people coming in, but we're glad you all are here. So welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Black Women Revolt Against Domestic Violence monthly Crucial Conversations. This is our Domestic Violence Awareness Month version, and we are extremely excited to have Sergeant Antonio Flores of the San Francisco Police Department on. He's going to be talking with us today about the lethality assessment tool that's currently being used by the San Francisco Police Department now that it has been rolled out throughout the entire department. Without any further ado, I think are you okay over there, Tony?
I am.
Okay.
I'm just making sure that I don't fumble the ball because Rebecca's going to be laughing at me when I do this.
She would never. She
Yes,
would never, ever, ever. It's all family here. This is all great. And we just appreciate you being here and taking time out of your schedule.
Well, thank you. Thank you. How much time do I have?
We usually let you talk for 15 to 20 minutes, depends on what you have, and then we do Q&A. So we want to start off with saying that everybody is welcome. We appreciate you being here. Reminder, if you are asking questions, those questions need to stay hypothetical. Confidentiality is key. We want to make sure we are not talking about specific cases or utilizing any person's specific case details and or names. That is extremely important. We often say what's said here stays here, but what you learn here should be shared out. And so this is being recorded. We do offer it limitedly to people who are unable to attend. And we're going to go on and get started. And I'll turn it back over to you, Tony.
Okay, perfect. I'm just going to share my screen in about a second. Hopefully this works. Okay, hold on. I'm not seeing the share thing working for me.
Oh, it should be. Because you're a co-host, it should be.
Okay, there we go. There we go. There we go.
There we go. We see it.
All right.
No worries.
By the Maryland Network Against Domestic Violence, the Lethality Risk Assessment is an innovative strategy designed to help prevent domestic violence homicides and serious injuries. Used by clergy, caseworkers, and even family members, the assessment helps to identify victims of domestic violence who are at the highest risk of being seriously injured or killed.
Lethality assessments are coming to California. It's a series of questions where we're asking the victim or survivor of a domestic violence incident questions. They're scientifically based, where we're trying to put a gauge on what the potential lethality for this relationship and the violence in this relationship.
Lethality checklist is something very new to me. I didn't realize that someone had put together a lethality checklist, and when I looked at it, I was just amazed to see the information that was on there. I love it. I like it. If you have certain circumstances that requires us to do this assessment, then it's right there for us, and we can ask the questions on there, do the check boxes, and see where we stand with this, and maybe caution on the side of the victim, get the EPO, get the restraining order. It does definitely help us. So it's a tool that we should probably all be using.
And hopefully with the lethality assessment, it's an eye-opener for the victim that they, hey, you know what? This could be serious. The next time this happens, I may not be here to talk about it. So it's the idea of getting counseling, going to a shelter, speaking to an advocate, things like that. It will enlighten the victim that that's the way they should go.
So hopefully everybody heard that, and I didn't faux pas. Did everybody hear that? Or okay, beautiful. So first off, Tony Flores from Special Victims Unit. I've been a police officer for 41 years. Yes, Rebecca, I did say 41 years. And your boss says I'm not allowed to retire until we get a handle of things, which is I don't know about that. But I love what I do. I enjoy what I do. And so just give you a little background. I started off at Central Station, then went to Mission Station. And then from Mission Station, I was assigned to the narcotics detail for about 13 years. From 13 years, then I got promoted to sergeant, and I was assigned to the Tenderloin Police Station Task Force, which is, I call the Diamond in the Rough. I love that place. A lot of good folks that live out there. And then I was promoted again to inspector and went to the domestic violence response unit, which that was preferably just domestic violence cases, stalking cases, elder abuse cases. And then from there, then there was the creation of the special victims unit, which then holds all these other special assignments like internet crimes against children, stalking, elder abuse, domestic violence, financial crimes, and then human trafficking also is just some of the sexual assault cases, crimes against children. And so the reason for the creation of the Special Victims Unit was to actually cross-train all the individuals, because as you know, we are shorthanded. But I felt a lot of love for doing domestic violence cases, because I grew up in a kind of that abusive home that really kind of wish something like this was in play before, and maybe my mom would have saw this and maybe even got out earlier. But my mom is my rock, and she was able to kind of steer us in the right direction. So I like, and again, I know Rebecca's heard this story before, but the domestic violence response unit was not my first assignment or pick. I really didn't want to go there because I've already lived that my whole life. But like a fish to water, I actually took to it really, and I understood why some people stay in an abusive relationship and won't get out. So that's my down and dirty kind of story about who I am and why we do what we do. Lethality assessment was a big push. We've been pushing it. So let's give a big shout out to Bayview Station, because Bayview Station was literally the folks that actually piloted this thing. So I give them a big applaud. They took in, and sometimes I think policy should be rolled out this way, is that we need, kind of test it out a little bit, get all the bugs out of the way, and so we knew our push. And I applaud the DA's office too, with really helping us getting this thing pushed forward. And finally, we were able to get this thing jumped off last year in October, where we did this rollout where it went online citywide to all the officers and all across 10 district stations. So what can you imagine happened? Did our numbers all of a sudden spike all the way up? Absolutely, they spiked, and we knew this, and that we didn't want people to go, oh, there's a pandemic, there's a thing. No, we knew that there was going to be, because everybody's doing this. So it's really that like in the video that you saw, was it really gave us a snapshot of what was going on. So how it's all presented is usually after the officers arrive at a situation in a domestic violence call, then as soon as they complete their first investigation. In other words, what was the initial call? Then they come out with the form. They say, hey, listen, I want to ask you a few questions. And the questions that I want to ask you really kind of gauge of what kind of relationship you are and how dangerous it is. It's totally, you don't have to answer the questions. It's a yes, no, or not answered, but it just kind of puts the thought inside there. So as the officer starts reading all the questions between 1 to 11, I say yes, no answer. Then after that, then maybe there's an observation that they may see. Maybe they see some redness around the neck. And we know some victims will not probably disclose sometimes about what has happened or minimize what they told us. So at that point, the officers will kind of document that. Then they'll do they'll kind of calculate how they scored in this thing and should they be reaching out to an advocate. And then before they do that, they talk to the client, they talk to the victim, and they'll say, hey, listen, I just looked at this. Some of your responses to these questions actually put you at a high risk. Do you mind if we go ahead and get a hold of a counselor, an advocate for you free of charge? And depending on what that client says, yes or no, determines the next step. So if the client says, yeah, I do want to kind of talk to that person, they're fantastic. So what they do is at that point, they turn off their body worn camera to give that confidentiality. And then all of a sudden they take out their department issue phone and they make that phone call. They'll say, hey, listen, so it'll go something like this. Hey, this is Inspector Flores. I just did the lethality assessment form, and they tallied in at high risk. They'd like to talk to you at this moment. So you give them the phone, you take a step back, you let them have that moment alone. And I ask the officers this, I generally ask them, I go, how much more time is added to your run? So they say normally it's about 5 minutes. It's not a long time. They'll get a sense of it. And just before they turn back on the body worn camera, they'll say, okay, what's the end game here? Are we going to stay? Are we going to go? And so on. If they do decide to go, the officers will try to make those arrangements depending on, as we all know, that some of the places are filled, right? We all know that sometimes there is not available housing for them, but the officers will try to work with those individuals trying to make that happen. So say all of a sudden they say, hey, I got an opening at La Casa. Claudia, big shout out. By the way, it's Claudia's birthday tomorrow. So if you didn't want, I'll wish her a happy birthday. That would be the time to do it. So Claudia is assigned to the Special Victims Unit. She sits off to the side for us, really big asset. So all of a sudden we say, hey, we go ahead and transport them. We never put down that location that we're transporting them because one, it's against law, and two is because we want to protect that confidentiality. And once they're taken there, then the handoff is done, and then the officers go back and they scan this thing, they upload it to their police reports. And then it is, as I tell folks, is that if this case does go forward, it is a discoverable document. In other words, Rebecca and her crew need to turn this thing over. But what does that mean? Well, it just means it's another piece of paper that says, hey, this person answered these questions. It's a yes, no, or not answered. So I think everybody now is familiar with these forms now. So it hasn't been a big issue. I think as far as in the courtrooms, and if there is, I know Rebecca will kind of let me know if there is. But overall, that's it. So how do our officers embrace this thing, especially new things introduced to the police department is sometimes challenging sometimes. It's because like, oh man, another fucking piece of paper. Now another something that I have to do. I already do this, again, a 5-page domestic violence observation form with all these questions. But I think Rebecca will kind of say is that the reason those forms are there is because sometimes we fail to ask those questions, or sometimes we skip a beat and we don't really document it properly. So I honestly thought I was going to get some little bit of pushback, but overall they actually embraced it. They was like, oh, this was actually good. Gave me a moment and gave us a moment to just talk to this person. I talked to one victim that I'd been to her house a couple of times, and then it was by the third time they said, you know what? I remember that what you asked me the first time, and I wasn't ready to go. And but this time I think I'm ready to go based on I keep hearing that it's starting to escalate more and more and more and more. So it is a tool not only for the victims and the clients to understand it, but also a tool for law enforcement too. If I have to go back to this house, and God forbid that I have to engage somebody at that house, I already know, set in my mind, that this is a dangerous spot to go to. And there's a possibility that maybe it not come out as a good outcome, could come out as a bad outcome. So again, it's part of the thing that we train officers on every Tuesdays and Fridays. We do this refresher to everybody in the San Francisco Police Department has to do a 2-year updates. So this is one of those things that we've constantly done. And we I always open it up to them and say, hey, so what did you think? What were the problems? And so far it's been smooth sailing. Should have we done it a long time ago? Absolutely. Absolutely. I would be the first to say that this has been sometimes things go slowly, but I'm just happy that they're here. And the reason that it's here today, and the reason why we have an update on our department general orders or the domestic violence manual, is because of you folks too. You weighed in on these things that we need. And sometimes we have to go to you folks and say, that we're trying to get this thing in, but it keeps stalling. And because it keeps stalling, we might need your help. So that's kind of my short version of this thing, and I'd be more than happy to take any kind of questions at this time.
If people want to, just because the way I have the screen showing, if you can raise your hand, I believe we can see it, and then we can call on you or just chime in.
Well, I mean, it's up to you what you want to do. I think you're making a mistake by not considering it. And I only say that.
I wanted to chime in. Thank you, Tony, for letting us know about this valuable tool that we've been able to use. I'm with the district attorney's office. I'm the managing attorney of the domestic violence unit. And I just wanted to share that we're able to use this form. It's an evidence-based form that helps us to capture risk of death and lethality in domestic violence cases. And we're able to use this form in court. Both we're able to use it for the victim to be know how in danger these look better. One of a better phrase is a scientific risk factor that's been researched by evidence that will show you how much in danger you are. It also is very helpful for our detention motions that we file in court sometimes in the most serious cases when we feel that the victim is in grave danger, and that we've asked the court to detain the defendant in court. We use this as an attachment to our detention motions, along with the police report and pictures of the injuries, for the judge to use in assessing what's the best way to keep the victim safe. Is it remain in custody? Is it electronic monitoring so that they can't violate the CPO? Is it home detention? So this high lethality form is so powerful for all of us in the field to use to assess the risk to the victim and the survivor. So I just wanted to say that piece. And thank you, Tony, for all you did to get this implemented, because it was a long haul. To move government agencies is not easy sometimes, but it is a very powerful tool, as are the domestic violence forms, where they show us where the injuries are, that they mark for us the demeanor of the parties at the time the police arrive, who's injured and where. So powerful for us in court. Thank you, Tony, for all you do.
Oh, thank you.
41 years. Which is 10 more years than I've been doing it. So I'm basically a child.
Thank you, Rebecca. You're very kind. But also, so you know that this if I told you how many years it took for us to get here, you'd be shocked. But again, it is. Can we do better? Absolutely. Can we can we help each other? Absolutely. This is where I come to you folks that sometimes maybe, as we already know, is that maybe that victim isn't ready to talk to law enforcement, and this is where once we recognize that is possibly, I'll go to Claudia and I'll say, Claudia, they're not ready to talk to me. Maybe you should talk to them first. And that really allows us to open that door that we are listening to them. Not everything's about Tony Flores. It's not my world. It's literally about, how do we get them? And as I tell the victims normally is, I hope to never see you again. Not because I don't like you, it's because now I know that possibly you got the help and possibly you've moved on with your life and you're kind of changed that direction. But I'm here for you, and not all the outcomes are going to be wonderful. If we really think about, I want you to imagine a victim of domestic violence coming forward is challenging, because first is the incident actually happened. They most likely told this incident at least 5 or 7 times. And then say Rebecca's team decides to go ahead and file the case. And so this case is going to linger. And it's not Rebecca's fault. It's not the public defender's fault or defense attorney's fault. It's literally the courtrooms. And we've seen cases where it almost takes 5 years later, 4 to 5 years later. And so you can imagine that there is no closure for this individual as we get closer. And to come to anybody has ever been to 850 Bryant, it's not an easy task. First, you got to find parking. Then 2 is you got to, you got to wait in line with everybody else, go through a metal detector. And sometimes you might be with the suspect or the suspect's family or even other folks, right? And then you go through that metal detector. Now you're kind of jockeying where to go. And we do, I know the district attorney's office has victim services and, have that person accompanying them to court, but sometimes that isn't enough, right? It really isn't enough. And I can tell you, and how I describe it to officers, is that I want you to remember the very first time that you testified in court. How did you feel? I can ask Rebecca the same thing. Remember the very first time you put on you were nervous, you were scared, you didn't know. Now it's like second nature to me. It's not. So for a victim, that is their very first time of walking into into a courtroom, telling their side of the story. And then as soon as they're done telling their side of the story, then there's another person that's going to be asking them these questions, either making them feel like nobody believed them. And so again, that's some of the process is challenging. And even with San Francisco jurors, whatever your feelings are, is they are listening sometimes, but sometimes it's smoke and mirrors sometimes that they can provide that reasonable doubt. Because for Rebecca's charge, I would say, well, just arrest them. I can do that. I can do that all day, every day. But the goal is to get it beyond a reasonable doubt. That is what Rebecca does. And then it says, okay, today, if we went to a jury trial today, 12 people, strangers, and also a judge would find this person guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's some things that we need to sometimes educate these folks too, is that it's not going to be overnight. It is not, I hate to tell you, it's not SVU, the 1 hour show. It really isn't like that. And so it becomes very challenging sometimes for these folks, and heartbreaking too, because they come in thinking that this is going to stop. And sometimes it's not going to stop. So we encourage them constantly is, when things are going through the process, please memorialize us. Please make sure that you document those. Please reach out and get those services to help you get through this thing, because it's not going to be an easy task.
Tony, I had a couple of questions, and I'm going to give a shout out to Kendall, our intern. This past spring, we did we did a deep dive. We looked at lethality and different cases around the state of California, and kind of looked into best practices for officers when approaching lethality, when going to do response calls. And we heard a little bit about the training that's currently going on around lethality, and I understand it's going to be updated. Could you talk a little bit more about that with everybody on the line?
For us, the training is usually, it goes through all the new disciplines that basically implemented in our new policy. So we have stalking, strangulation, lethality assessments. We have services. We talk about victim services. We talk about children that are present. Also pets. Let's not forget about our pets also. And we go to, look at Claudia. we go through all these different things to update those individuals. I've added videos there, basically that Post puts out, that my co-partner John Keene, who's an amazing investigator that does our stalking cases, but he helped kind of develop some of this new stuff that is taught across the state. So it's really kind of nice to kind of have that. And then I add in those videos that, as we say, police work isn't pretty. And some of those incidents that really, tug at your heart, where these individuals are going to this house and thinking that it's one thing and it turns out to be something different. And I think that's the thing, the message that I try to tell the officers constantly is that domestic violence are probably the most dangerous calls for you to go to, because they can change on you within a second. You can really, and that's so don't be on your phone, kind of playing Candy Crush. Don't be, not that they do, don't be, with your hands in your pocket. Make sure that you're talking on the way. Make sure that you have those questions. And I talk a lot, Rebecca and I, we do talk a lot. And even though we clown on each other all the time, but is the cases that she sees, that she reviews, and then the feedback that I get from her. And that's really helped me with how I train the officers. Like some of the, hey, when you get there, don't be so quick. I know, as long as they're not killing each other. No, we want, but let that body worn camera, let those spontaneous statements and reactions come in, because possibly we have to believe, and I tell the officers is, I want you to believe that this is going to be the last interaction that you have with the victim. This is going to be the last time that this victim is possibly even going to be cooperative with law enforcement. But Rebecca wants to do her job. We want to do the job for the people of California. And to do this is literally, what can we capture right at that? What are the spontaneous statements and reactions at that time? And that really helps us down the road, because if Rebecca looks at it and they say, what's up with the victim? Well, she's not calling me back, or he's not calling me back. And maybe they're in hiding. Maybe they just, they need a timeout too. And, or, well, let me take a look. And she reviews the body worn camera. She goes, okay, we got this. We can actually do this based on those spontaneous statements and reactions at the time. And I'm not speaking for Rebecca, but it literally kind of helps me train these other officers, and they get it. They actually understand that. Understand. Again, I always say this: can we do better? 100%. We can always do a lot better, and we're constantly kind of tweaking this thing that we do. So I think some of the other stuff is the referral cards that we give out, the services cards that we give out. I try to remind the officers that, you hand out pieces of paper. We hand out this Marcy card. You hand out the special victims referral card. You hand them an emergency protective order. But I want you to really imagine that this victim, this client, is in crisis at the moment. Are they really going to remember all those things that you're handing them at that moment? Probably not. So when you get them and you have that moment, say, hey, listen, I know you said that you want to just to memorialize this, document this. Here, I'm going to circle right here on the lower right-hand corner of this card. That's how you obtain a police report, and you get it free of charge. And here's the website. I checked it out myself. It works perfect. And then I go on the other side in case they're in custody and you need to get logged on with the Vine program, which lets them know when soon that person's going to get out of custody. And then we have our restraining order clinics, and then I'll kind of point out that this is where we told you to go to 400 McAllister Street, but why don't you reach out to these folks? They will kind of help you out to do those and get those things together. So we're trying to show a partnership with everybody on this referral card. I usually do a fact check on every 2 years to make sure those numbers are good. And once in a while I call Beverly and say, hey, is anybody new here? Is anybody that we should be adding to this thing? And Another big shout out to Beverly Upton, because she really helped me get this Department General Order and manual through. We worked on it for 7 years, but we were able to get through. 7 years of my life I will never get back. We were able to get this thing, and again, it was that support that we got from the crew that was on there.
Always an honor to work with you, Tony, no matter how long it takes.
Seventh time was a charm. I really appreciate you being here, and of course, Bev. I was like, Bev, where are you? We love that she comes on and she shows up and she shows out. This is a little unscripted, but we had a rally on Monday where we're talking about new trends that we're noticing in terms of DV, and I shouldn't say a lot. It's 7, but they seem to be growing and multiplying. And I think there's been another one since then with lethal type DV. And we're wondering, are you noticing any? You've said that you noticed an uptick, of course, once people did the assessment, but when will you all have statistics, and how do people get access to those?
You know what? Let me find that out for you, because I know we're always tweaking it. I know if I said, hey, just go to our portal, San Francisco Police Department, kind of that thing, and you see, but it doesn't kind of break it down. So me saying, hey, man, this is what's up. I would rather give you the accurate information, but I know we all sit together, and I know like all of us that work this thing is we'll talk about those. Sometimes we'll get case specific, say, hey, listen, we came across this. This is actually new. And that's where sharing it means a lot at that moment, is that we kind of want to make sure, as we know, 10 years, 15 years ago, we really weren't, we had the cell phones and the stuff like that, but the way they're being used now, even with tracking or stalking individuals and those things, and then you throw social media inside this equation, it's really a big game changer. And for each thing comes new challenges, especially not only for us, but also for Rebecca and her team too, is because now we got to figure out, how do we get this great evidence into the courtroom when people don't even understand how we obtained it, or and so on.
For sure. Thank you for that, Tony. I was just about to say, any other questions? I saw Bev's hand pop up.
Sorry, I'm trying to raise my hand on Zoom. I want to join Pam and pretty much everybody here, Tony, which this is not a surprise to you, but DV fell off the radar screen on the crime data warehouse, right? Yeah. Several years ago. And for a while, I was calling Dave Lazar about, I don't know, every quarter and saying, is it back? Can we get it back? And, I haven't done that for a while, but I'd love for this to be considered a request. And I haven't talked with Pam. We didn't talk about this ahead of time, but again, exactly what Pam is asking. We cannot, without some kind of a portal or that crime data warehouse, which I used to use all the time because we could go right in. It was very up to date and see how many DVs there were, or DV calls. Right now, DV is lumped, as far as I can tell, in with assault. Rape, quote unquote, is its own category. So there is some data there, but on DV calls, the last time I checked, and the last time I worked with David Lazar on this, it wasn't included. So this might be an opportunity, Tony. You have a lot of community members here that could really use that data.
You guys really don't want to see me around, do you?
We want you. We need you.
No,
you don't get to retire. We still got work to do.
I think it's something that I can approach the bosses to and say, hey, listen, this is what they want. And Bev knows this. We come out with a report every year about, that, but the breakdown, it's really becomes challenging sometimes of how and not to blame the officers, but how the information is given to the officers. And sometimes, again, victims aren't ready to disclose the whole story and how it is actually reported. And then it's put in a category. And then all of a sudden it should have been a DV when it wasn't a DV and it's a simple assault because they weren't ready to disclose who that person was. So it becomes challenging, but so this is how it's done here. It's not rocket science, but it's so all the police reports across our city are, if it involves our discipline and other special victims unit, for example, domestic violence or stalking, the assigning persons will look at these police reports. They will go ahead and determine if those police reports should be assigned to an investigator or not. And then once that's then they'll kind of start looking at these things for somewhat of a pattern or something like that. I know when I'm looking at them, and if I catch something, maybe the person has a pending case, and I'll reach out to Rebecca. I know we've done this a couple of times. Like, hey, Rebecca, this person just came up again in a police report. I know there's a pending litigation on this thing. Maybe it's jury trial. It helps her team to say, hey, listen, this person is being not a nice person. Maybe there should be another conversation regarding the status of this person, even when they're out of custody or not. So again, we'd like to kind of share that stuff. I think I know for a fact that we learned from Clara Tampanka case involving that how that was tragic and a lot of information was not shared. So now if there's on probation or parole, we make sure that that agency also knows about the person's status and if they were what they did, and kind of give them an update, have that person come on in, or kind of figure out what is going on. How probation and parole, and I'm not knocking how they do their business, but it's a little bit different now. Let's be honest with each other. How that business is done is not the same. When I'm training officers and I talk about what a motion to revoke hearing was, I get this look like, what was that? That was a very quick hearing. It was probably one of the ones that just went like that. Either you violated or you didn't violate it, and depending on the outcome, either you went to your room or you didn't, or there were more conditions that were put onto your probation. We don't have that anymore. We do have it, but it's in a whole different arena. So it's not quite like it used to be, but and I don't know the answer to that one. I really don't know the answer to that. But again, it really comes up to that data, that how we kind of share that data. I know the lethality assessment, we were all sitting there, and initially when it was just Bayview, we were able to kind of break it down with, okay, we saw this case, and kind of determine. But now you're talking about 10 district stations. And like I said, I know Beverly was part of that conversation too. It's like, you're talking about citywide. Every time they're at a DV, your numbers are just going to go off the charts. So we don't have that luxury to take a case by case basis like we used to.
We have a question in the chat from Jen Wadsworth. And so also we need to be remembering not everybody is immersed in this work specifically. And so it's a really good question. She says, describe what happens next when a situation checks enough boxes on the lethality assessment. When a case is deemed lethal, or when is that case deemed lethal? And how does it change the way that the officers respond?
So right after the, hold on, I'm just doing something real quick. So right when the assessment form is administered, and then there is a scoring. And the scoring will then at that moment come up. Hold on, I'm just going to get the right side. You think I would have memorized this by now. The victim screened into the protocol if yes to questions 1 and 3, or yes to at least 4 out of the 4 to 11, which then refers the protocol. And then, or maybe there was some observation that the officers noticed, like I pointed out, maybe redness around the neck or something like that, or the victim didn't screen in. At that point, then that's when the officer will ask that victim, hey, we see that you're a high risk, you're a danger. So would you like to speak to a hotline counselor? And it's either yes or no answer. And again, if they say yes, then at that point, then we go ahead and do that thing. That's just for the lethality assessment. The case itself is going to move forward or not. So if that individual is there, that basically is allegedly assaulted this person, pretty much they're going to be taken into custody. They're going to be taken to another location, and then there's going to be process. And some of that goes through an interview. Some of it, they're going to be served with an emergency protective order if the officers obtain that, and then that case is going to go ahead. Either it's a misdemeanor, in other words, the person's looking up to a year in county jail, or it's going to be a felony, which is that's a year and more. The felony cases are then assigned to an investigator at the Special Victims Unit, and then it moves through the system. And then depending on the day, Rebecca and her team will get an email, or they'll say, hey, Rebecca, I have this case. It's in the queue to take a look at it. And then we'll either talk on the phone sometimes, because I think we both we trust each other and that kind of thing. What do you think? Do you think can we beat this thing that I just told you about spontaneous statements or reaction called Crawford? Will we be able to get this through? And, sometimes I'll say yes, sometimes I'll say no. And then she'll make that final determination. And then whatever determination is made, I reach back out to that victim and say, hey, listen, this is what this is. Even when the victim says, hey, I don't want to press charges. And this is challenging sometimes for us, is that you have an individual that was severely beaten and, almost left for dead, and that this person says, I don't want to press charges. And how I always present that thing to that victim is that with or without your cooperation, it's not up to you. It's up to the district attorney's office to file charges or not. Why do I tell them that? Is because now I've taken it out of their hands. So if they are back with the batter, if they are back, they say, honey, you know what? That mean Inspector Flores, he was the one that said it was up to them to go forward, but it wasn't me, right? We were trying to think about this if we really thought about it logically. So that is when we kind of move forward with those cases, those type of cases. Hopefully that answered that question.
Jen, did that answer your question? If not, feel free to unmute to follow up. If not, we're going to go on and pass it to Taylor.
No, that was very helpful. Thank you.
Awesome.
Hi. Thank you for joining us today. I had a bit of a legislative question, but it does affect us. I'm noticing that Senate Bill 290 passed, and that extends the amount of time that a victim or their representative can ask for essentially a fact sheet or an incident report from 2 to 5 years for sexual assault, stalking, human trafficking, or elder abuse of a dependent adult. I was wondering if that or how that affects cases that you guys might be looking at, in terms of sometimes the DV cases go on for quite a bit.
Yeah. So, and that's a great question, because I know Rebecca and I will, we have to understand that's why it's important that these folks memorialize it, because say we were never able to charge that case, for example, but now this person comes up on the radar again, maybe something totally different. And then Rebecca can go back and go backwards and say, hey, listen, this person, this is where they've been more memorialized as being the suspect in this particular case, for example, human trafficking or sexual assault or domestic violence. And she will be able to use that to bring it back into the courtroom. And I would say it's probably one of the best tools ever, because you have this person on this other side that may have never gotten justice, but then all of a sudden they do get some kind of justice down the road where they didn't get any justice, and hold that person accountable. I always, it's very challenging I think for a lot of us, because we want to give some kind of closure for these individuals. But I really think sometimes legislation like this is really going to help. And again, back to the referral card, it's that they can obtain those those police reports, and it's not only domestic violence, but it's elder abuse, sexual assault, and human trafficking. They can get that police report within 5 days, and it's free. I mean, that's one of the best things I ever put on that card, because it really helped those individuals. They don't have to wait. They can actually go into file their restraining orders, all that stuff. And so it's important.
Did anyone
Hopefully that answered
else?
that question.
Taylor, you good?
No, I'm good. I was just gonna say thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Did anyone else have any questions? Thoughts, comments other than thank you? We really appreciate all that you do, and we're really excited that this tool is being used by our local police department. I know we have other people in here. I can't see, unfortunately, because it will change the composition of the screen and I'm recording. So if anyone has a question, please feel free to unmute at this time and ask. I know we have some law professionals here. We have some advocates here.
I'd like to just, I use this for my officers when I'm training, but I would like to read this little thing. It's called some of you might be familiar with this. It's the starfish story. An old man was walking on the beach one morning after a storm. In the distance, he could see someone moving like a dancer. He came close and he saw that it was a young woman picking up a starfish and gently throwing it then back into the ocean. Young lady, why are you throwing the starfish into the ocean? The sun is up, the tide is going out, and if I don't throw them, they will die, she said. But young lady, do you realize that there are so many miles of beaches and thousands of starfish? You couldn't possibly make a difference. The young woman listened politely, bent down, picked up another starfish, threw it into the sea and said, it made a difference for this one. And that's the message, is that we're going to get those cases that you're going to get a lot of them. And it's, I call it like almost building a sandcastle. And sometimes we've had repeat victims that clients that come again. And how I treat them is always, how can I help you today? So for all of you folks, that should be the same message, is how can I help you today?
That is good. If anyone else has any questions, or if not, we're going to go on and conclude. We are just right before the lunch period is over. Bev has a question. Go ahead, Bev.
It's not really a question. Can I cheat just for a second before we let everybody go, Pam? I just put our Watch City Hall Turn Purple rally flyer. We just got it up in the chat. I'll be in touch with a lot of you, but please feel free to join us. It's next Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. Lots of us will be there, and then at dusk around 7, City Hall will be lighted up purple. So we're excited about that. And you'll get to meet lots of DV advocates and policymakers from City Hall and our friends in law enforcement and the community. So thank you all so much. Pam, thanks for the plug. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Taylor will be joining you. So she's excited, and Jafria and I, in our absences, will be in DC during that time. If no one else has any other announcements or things, I want to extend as much as one can. This is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And of course, while it is not happy, we appreciate all of the work that people are doing in this field to make the lives of survivors better, to help and to hold those who cause harm accountable. We want to thank you for being here with us today. We look forward to having you here with us next month. And we want to put it out there early. We're going to do an unconventional December conversations. We're going to have a ugly sweater lunch party online, and so get your best sweaters together, and we're going to be giving a raffle and letting people judging sweaters. And so we're excited about that, just to do something fun and kind of let our hair down. We work hard during the year, and we know the holidays are coming, but we honor each of you and we celebrate each of you, and thank you for being here. And of course, our special guest, Tony, we appreciate you. We love you. We appreciate all of the service and the hard work that you have done in order to make the lives of survivors better. And without any further ado, we're going to say farewell to everybody, and we will see you next month. Take care.
Thank you for all your hard work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, bye,
Bye-bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Bye.